Welcome to Permission to Evolve. I'm your host, Brandon Thielk. I'm a performance and life coach.
Holly Deschenes. I'm Brandon's co-host and producer on this podcast.
Today, we're going to be doing another Ask Me Anything. We try to do this periodically so you guys can get to learn more about me and my perspectives on top of, my just rambling about nervous system regulation every week. But I've been traveling a lot. I'm in Vegas right now. I've been here for about a week now, which is kind of weird. I went to Tucson for the cycling camp again, gave a talk there, spent 2 days cycling, and I felt like I picked up where I left off. Like it was much easier this time. It was hotter, got 195-degree weather going on right now there. So it was cool to just get back into it, and it seemed, getting back on the bike. It was more of just a flow this time. I worked out all the details, so I got to really just enjoy it. And it was a shorter trip. So I came here to Vegas. My girlfriend came here for work. And so we've been talking about coming here. And I haven't been since college. It's been cool to see how much it's changed. Went to the Sphere, which pretty awesome. Saw the Wizard of Oz. So they basically just it was the Wizard of Oz movie, but they added some like special effects and kind of re-edited it a little bit differently. But they made it more of a immersive experience. If you're familiar with the movie, there's like a tornado in the beginning, and so they like turned on wind machines and like threw like leaves in the air and stuff, and so it was like blowing all over the stadium. And there's a part where she was like picking an apple, and they just dropped apples from the ceiling and stuff, like foam ones.
Yeah, I was like, oh, right, yeah.
It was just kind of like little effects here and there to make it more of an experience. But yeah, definitely very cool. It was kind of like an IMAX theater times 20, I guess, was the experience. So I've been super curious about that. I'm glad we got to do that. Had some good dinners here and went to a show called Awakening. So that was pretty cool in the Win here behind me. That was Yeah, it was just kind of a story with some acrobats and things like that, the typical Vegas show, but very cool effects there. And yeah, it's just like the scale of things here and the level of thought and detail that goes into things is pretty special. It was good to reconnect with it. So I'm heading out to Ironman Texas this weekend. So the big race. A lot of the top pros are going to be there. It's basically like a world championship field. So it'll be exciting there to support some clients. And I haven't been to Houston since really my baseball career wrapped up. So that was kind of where everything went south on me. So it'll be good to spend some time and reconnect with Houston. Just pretty much nonstop right now. We missed last week. Sorry about that for you loyal listeners. Just couldn't work it out in the schedule. But yeah, definitely going to try and make it every single Monday here. Today, with this Ask Me Anything, Holly's got some questions and we're just going to roll with it. So an extended version of you asking me a question every week. So excited to get
Yeah,
into it.
it'll be a whole list of questions that I have. Some of them are a little more lighthearted and like get to know you kind of questions, and some of them maybe could be classified as deep, shall we
Hmm.
say. But yeah, it's cool that you're in Vegas. Just like seeing the background and everything. The last time I was in Vegas was for my 30th birthday. So yeah, it's been a minute. But we can jump into it. I'm gonna start us off with something, since you mentioned your baseball career and going back to Houston. This is sort of fitting. This is not a deep question, but maybe you'll have some stuff to talk about with it. But now that you aren't a baseball player anymore, do you have a favorite sport?
I don't. So I find myself caring less and less about sport, even though I work with athletes. I really admire like the work that gets put into being exceptional at anything. And I like the expression of it when somebody's mastered it and they're completely present and just get lost in the moment, and you get to see some pretty cool performances there. If I do watch any sports, it's generally playoff based, so when the stakes are higher, I think that's more fun to watch. But yeah, it's just really an appreciation for people that take their craft very seriously and build their whole lives around it. I think that's a very special thing. In terms of, I was like, was more of like, I like to participate. I wasn't much of a spectator ever, I guess. And yeah, I like doing athletic things still. I still work out pretty regularly and If there's opportunities to do some sort of athletic thing, I will. But it's not something I guess I regularly build into my life anymore. I'm always kind of like waiting for the day. Maybe something will pop into my head where I'm like, oh, I want to take on some sort of athletic endeavor again. That hasn't quite clicked with me yet. So I'm very open to it, but something that's got motivation behind it hasn't really happened since baseball.
When you are in the watching like the playoff kind of things, do you have a sport you prefer? Any sport that's like at a high level playoff kind of situation?
I've always been a Dallas Cowboys fan. Generally, they flop, but they those games, if they're in the playoffs, I'll watch those. I don't really get into NBA much. It's always just been hard since growing up in Chicago in the Jordan years. It's been hard to see anything that's even close to that for me. I like watching playoff baseball as well, but that's getting kind of less interesting with the Dodgers just buying all the players and stuff, and they just dominate all the time. So I don't know. That's kind of seems more of a given now rather than like a competition is pretty equal. So yeah, I like it when it's head to head and it's close and exciting that way. But yeah, so probably playoff baseball still would be the one.
We're not going to completely switch gears. You might be familiar with Michael Gervais. He's a sports psychologist.
Okay.
He did a ton of work with the Seattle Seahawks, like in the era of Russell Wilson and, when they were
Hmm.
really good back then. But he talks about this idea of like the messy edge and
Hmm.
finding your way to the messy edge. I'm curious about how you define that.
I think the messy edge is you're pushing up against your limits and you're trying to explore what that looks like. I think it is good practice to get in a little bit over your head. I'm not sure if that's exactly his concept, but I think that's one of the things I really appreciate about triathletes is it's inherent in the nature of it, of like you're doing something extreme for a very long time. And I'm always fascinated with when you push up against those limits, like what comes up within you. Some people shut down, get defeated pretty easily. You might have some pretty dark thoughts start to surface. But that's the thing is like when you get towards the edge of yourself, that sort of starts to reveal itself. So because like my mind is like kind of working off of my habits and what's normal for me. And so I build my circuitry to support that. And so growth is this process of like pushing against that and trying to expand it. Sometimes we have to go over the line to figure out where our limits are. And that can be a bit of a messy process. We're equating it, the body could shut down, right? We could go past the point of our capacity and that can be kind of scary, but generally those moments we learn so much. It's the willingness to go there to figure out who you really are, because that's how I view all these things is it's always a self-discovery process. And if you just kind of work in within what's comfortable, you're not getting exposure to those deeper layers. When we push against up against those limits, the deeper layers reveal themselves to us, and everything is about self-belief. And so anything that's not on board with me going past my ceiling, my nervous system has these limits, and anytime I approach that, I get a ton of backlash. And so the athletes that can zone so much into determination and really stay connected and push through those moments, those are pretty special moments. And that bumping up against the limits that exposes you to those deeper layers of yourself that don't believe in you. If we have self-worth issues, if we have deservingness, lack of deservingness, all that stuff's going to start to pop up and we're going to be confronted with that. And then we have that choice of whether I buy into that or not. They always say we only like use X amount of capacity of our brain or whatever. And even like Navy SEALs, they talk about how we only operate at like 60% of our potential, like that kind of stuff. The mind does limit us, and that's the area to be explored if you're trying to become somebody new, to expand beyond what's normal for you. That means you have to go pretty deep into yourself to unlock some things, to give your mind that freedom to let go and surrender. And generally there's like these intense things that are designed to keep us still. And so the refusal to buy into that stuff and continue to rise into it, that's where you kind of see the magic happen. It's almost like a detachment from ego, where we throw caution to the wind and we're not trying to protect ourselves anymore in pursuit of something great. That's kind of where we see that we can go far beyond what we thought we could.
Yeah, he defines it similarly, right? It's like a vulnerability edge is kind of
Mhm.
how. Yeah.
And unknown, there's not that data, right? It's like, oh, like I feel like I'm kind of hanging out there, right? And I don't
Yeah.
know what this is going to bring for me. And it's the willingness to face that, that's where the breakthroughs happen. Because we all have these, they talk about like a governor on a car or something like that that only allows you to go so fast. We all have that built into our systems. And so to override that takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength. And you don't really know what's on the other side of it. And that's the scary part. That's what we talk about every week, is to venture into the unknown and kind of see what can happen. We have to believe in that brighter future. We have to believe in our breakthroughs. And so the only way we approach that stuff is we have to be confronted with the aspects of ourselves that won't go there. And we have to dismantle those and disprove those.
All right. So in your work, you help people work through kind of their own internal problems or blocks that they have. Are there any problems or internal blocks that you see it as super common in terms of purple people that you're working with?
So most high performers, their entire identity is on not feeling good enough. I'd say that's the core of it is like they had a tough parent or a coach wronged them or something, so somebody hurt them. And so that made them feel very vulnerable and weak. And so they usually make this decision to never feel that way again. And so then they go all in on something. But then there's like a detachment that happens because that's that fuel. So we all come here worthy and good enough, and we learn that we're not. If I'm operating under that idea and I'm using that as my drive or my fuel, um, there is a little bit of a detachment from the present moment, because like I'm always stuck in the past. Like the past thing's always driving me. And so I'm gonna have lack of awareness. Like this tunnel vision is gonna make me override things that might actually be important data for me to integrate. And that's why I'm not 1,000% like action oriented person. Is I think there's room for taking a step back and always reworking things. And in that place, it is like addressing your vulnerabilities and acknowledging them and actually feeling them. Because if I have aspects of myself that are stuck in the past and they're built on pain, like that's like tucked away in my system. And that's the stuff that's going to come out when I go to push my limits. Okay, so they go hand in hand. And so it's that drive that made us really good at something is also the thing that holds us back at a certain point. And so I'd say that's one of the more common things I work on is getting people to see that, like, hey, you don't need to carry that chip anymore, because it's actually making you miserable now. And if you're not happy with what you're doing, that's going to be hurting your performance. Because peak performance is really about us being present and really connected and enjoying what we're doing. And that's like everything else on top of it is just the complexities of life, of like, oh, if I'm an athlete and I have sponsors and things like that, there's all these extra pressures where I feel like I need to do things for people outside of me. But it's always about coming back to yourself. That's when you unlock things. That's when you gain a greater capacity and you get really in tune with the ebbs and flows that you go through. And it's your role in all of it. Rather than blocking things out and overriding them, we listen to them and we try to understand them. And then that increases our capacity. I can let go of the shame, or I can let go of the wound, and now my system works better as a result, and things are actually easier for me. So it's about surrendering the struggle, surrendering the fight, surrendering the battles, which, if that's what's been driving me, like, and I no longer have that, like, I might not be as motivated, right? So there's these things are kind of, it's that willingness to explore, like, okay, like, if this changes forms and my identity is wrapped up in this, like, what does that look like on the other side? That might be terrifying for me. We just try to smooth out that path to kind of grab for the next thing that's going to bring us to a cleaner place. And yeah, it's a wrestling because our mind is a record of the past, and so it's always trying to cling to safety, which means what we know. It's always trying to go back to the same old things, especially if that's what's created results for me. But once again, that's also placing limits on me, and I might have built an identity where I only go so far, or if I'm in the spotlight, I start to crumble, or any of those things start to happen because of that piece. We're trying to restore worthiness. We're trying to restore this idea that you are good enough and you always were, and that this was just characters in the play that made you feel those things about yourself. And then we start to question, well, like, where was that person operating from? Did they live their life to the fullest? Did they like pursue their dreams? Did they live the life they wanted to? If not, they probably have some bitterness and resentment that they've projected onto me and I've taken on as my own. And so it's getting clear on like what's actually my motivations, not just pushing against or driving away from the things that I don't like, but facing them and coming to peace with them. That's this idea that I programmed into my system these negative things about myself as a product of my environment, the things that were modeled or shown to me or done to me. Those started somewhere else. That had to do with whoever the person was and what they went through, and I'm just like carrying on that badge because they hurt me. So we want to forgive and surrender it because that's what gives you access back to yourself. Is we start to get very internally driven. We start to be in our internal process rather than focusing on the external and seeking validation or approval from anybody else. It's a difficult road to travel, but it is about just being real with yourself. And like so many times, it's really just take a look at your mood, take a look at how you treat people, take a look at how you feel on a daily basis. If you're not enjoying things, if you're not kind, if like all that, you're holding on to some wounds, and being in a stress response all day, every day is going to wear you down, and that's going to lead to burnout and exhaustion over time, and you might have created success that way, but what was it for in the end if you're not happy, right? So we try to mix in the best of both worlds of being able to perform well and also enjoy what you're doing and being at peace with yourself. That's kind of that sweet spot we're always searching for. It's difficult to achieve, because the mind is very complex, and we do have all these different things that have happened to us throughout our lives, but we've drawn conclusions that maybe don't serve us that well, and that's what creates that tension, that stress in us all the time. And so we try to dismantle that.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit on these next couple of questions.
Okay.
But do you remember your dreams?
Not as much anymore. I go through phases with it. When I was doing like a ton of internal work, I would say my dreams were like more meaningful, and yeah, there'd be moments where I'd wake up and I was like shaken by something, or there was details like I felt like I needed to figure out. But then yeah, I go through periods where I don't feel like I'm like dreaming at all. And now it just might be currently it just might be like subtle things here and there, like some random character in my life might just pop up and it's something random, but it's not never it's usually not anything that like jars or shakes me anymore, and it's just something that kind of passes by where I feel like I'm subtly processing something. But um yeah, I think a lot of the bigger stuff came when I was really like digging into myself, trying to find peace. That's where I was getting like kind of the deeper messages of my subconscious trying to work that stuff out. And so yeah, I don't hang on to too much of that stuff anymore.
Were any of those dreams, or are any of the dreams that you have that's when they pop up randomly, are they reoccurring?
No, I've worked with a lot of clients that say they have reoccurring dreams, and I don't think that's ever been an experience of mine where it was this common theme over and over again. It was more of, well, because if it was like a big message, I would like sit with it and try and understand it and work through it. But um, yeah, a lot of the stuff that just pops up, it's just pretty random now, and it doesn't seem to be like connected to anything else.
This is a definitely lighthearted question, but are are you a superhero person at all?
Yeah, I've gone through phases. I think when the Marvel movies like first came out and stuff, I guess I was into that. Let's see. I like the idea of like Superman that's like indestructible and he can fly and all that stuff. I think I gravitated towards that for a while.
Yeah. Would you say he's your favorite? Or do you have any that like stand
Let
out to you?
me think. Yeah, I would say like he was probably my favorite was Superman. I always thought like Batman was like interesting because he's just kind of a normal guy, and then he just puts on the suit and does all these crazy things. But it's not like otherworldly stuff.
Yeah. Just rich guy stuff.
Yeah, just rich guy. He's got his own cave and all the tools, but yeah, he's just a normal dude flying around, and
Yeah. Yeah. While we're kind of on this like lighthearted theme, I do have a list of this or that. The last time we did an Ask Me Anything, I was like, oh, I should have done a this or that. So this time I planned ahead and actually have one. So obviously, welcome you to elaborate on any of these in the this or that.
okay.
But starting with coffee or tea.
Oh, I definitely coffee. So I drink coffee every day. I look forward to it actually. And I just drink it black. I don't like to add any calories or sugar or anything to it. So yeah, it definitely gets me going, gets the mind working. Tea doesn't seem to do much for me. My mom like loves tea, and so if I hang out with her, I'll have some, but um, yeah, it doesn't really do it for me.
Okay. As a note, not only do you drink it black, you also usually drink it cold.
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't,
Coffee.
I don't,
Yes.
I don't generally like hot drinks. Well, especially growing up, like so my dad would drink like scalding hot coffee and stuff, and I never understood. I'm like, don't you like burn your tongue? Like, I don't, I never liked waiting for it to cool down or anything. So yeah, I like iced coffee.
Tequila or vodka.
I'm probably 50-50 on this one. Well, I do like mezcal a lot, which is like a version of tequila. I've been on a kick of that for probably 2 years. But yeah, generally, if I'm just out and about, I'll have like a tequila soda or vodka soda. Probably err more on the vodka soda, but tequila cocktails probably.
Early or late. As in time of day, not like do you arrive early or late? Like,
Oh,
are
okay,
you
okay.
early person or yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so traditionally I've been like a night person. I can stay out all night. It's like I don't like feel like I need to hit a bedtime or anything like that. My mind is always just kind of taking a little bit to kick on in the morning. So I don't prefer to do mental tasks until like 9 or 10 o'clock, just so I can get the fog to clear. But yeah, I don't have when I was doing once again when I was doing a ton of work internally, there'd be a ton of fog like every morning, and that's not the case anymore. Usually, I just need to wake up. I'm not like feeling cloudy. So I've always like wanted to become a morning person because I feel like morning people are so productive. Just the getting up super early, it just always made me feel really tired in the afternoon and stuff. So, um, yeah, definitely a late person.
That is a thing you can change because I will tell you I used to like straight up be a night owl and now like I can't stay up past like it
Mhm.
I don't know nine
Yeah.
o'clock. So all right. Anyway, movie or TV series.
Yeah, I think nowadays more TV series, say like 2010 and before, I was really into movies. But yeah, with Netflix and everything, it kind of shifted more towards that where, and you can binge stuff. I don't watch a ton of TV, but if I gravitate towards a show, like I'll probably binge it. But yeah, so yeah, now more TV series for sure because it just keeps going and keeps you hooked and you get a lot more time with it.
This is off topic of the this or that, but do you ever get very invested in like the characters and that's like I like kind of fall in love with the characters and then I can't stop watching it and then I'm like sad when it's over.
Yeah, yeah, that definitely happens. It's
Yeah.
well, yeah, you create like this emotional bond with them or something where
Yeah.
you look forward to what they're doing next, and then when there's nothing next, it's kind of a bummer. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Pie or cake?
Probably, yeah, pie. I've never been much of a cake person. Of course, if it's done really well, great. But yeah, I think more of just like a banana cream pie, coconut, those types of like I like the fruit dynamic to a lot of pies. Yeah.
I'll have to do a whole pie this or that in the future then. All right. Pizza or tacos?
Tacos. I generally like I like brick oven pizza and stuff like that. So if it's that type, I'll probably choose that. But tacos I can kind of eat any day. In general, Mexican food, I think they use the same ingredients for everything, but somehow it's just like good every time, you know? Yeah, so I I do eat quite a few tacos.
Sparkling or still water, that
Sparkling
is.
water. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because I don't drink anything besides, water, coffee, or alcohol. So, I like to mix it up a little bit with having some bubbles in there. I never drink soda, so
Yeah.
it kind of fulfills the different dynamic there.
Sunrise or sunset?
Well, because I'm a night person, sunset. If when I go like down to South Florida, like I try to catch the sunrise coming over the water, but yeah, generally not too motivated to get out of bed that early. So yeah, sunset for sure.
Hot or cold, as in air temperature?
Definitely hot. Other than like around Christmas time and snow, I don't really need the cold ever. I don't prefer it. I'd rather be somewhere warm for sure. And most winters I try to, even though I'm in Nashville and it doesn't get that cold, I try to do a lot of traveling over the winter to warm places. So yeah,
All right. Beach or mountain?
traditionally beach, but I've been doing a lot more mountain stuff as of late, and I do enjoy it. Like when we went to Colorado last year and being in Tucson with the mountains there, it's definitely pretty stunning and beautiful. That beach is all kind of the same thing. So I think the different experiences you can have with mountains is probably better, but most of the time I'll probably choose the beach.
Whatever. One of these days we'll get, I don't think all beaches are the same, but we'll
Well,
have to maybe do like a
yeah, I
cal
mean,
yeah.
yeah, there's variances for sure.
Yeah.
But it's a pretty consistent experience.
East Coast or West Coast?
I enjoy both. Yeah, for more of extended periods of time, I think probably West Coast because of all the natural beauty and stuff. And but yeah, like I love New York and I love kind of being in big cities and there's a high concentration of that on the East Coast. So they just fulfill different things for me, I guess.
Lake or ocean?
Definitely ocean. I've never been much of a lake person. Yeah, I mean it just kind of feels too much of the same, I guess, all the time. Like well, Lake Michigan's different in Chicago. That feels like an ocean. But yeah, I definitely like prefer the big waves and like all that stuff going on.
The smell. Sometimes lakes smell not good. I feel like the ocean usually does.
Yeah, the water's moving a lot more.
Well, that was the whole this or that. So hopefully everyone listened to that and had a good time. And also, if you have any ideas for this or that, please send them. Because I do think that's kind of a fun way to like get to know somebody. But but one of these times, like in terms of like beaches, all give you the same vibe. We're gonna have to do the like California coastline because like Northern California beaches, Central Coast, and Southern are
Yeah.
definitely way different vibes.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's true.
yeah, I might have to fight you on that one.
Well,
Anyway,
and but in California, you got like the cliffs and stuff, but
yeah,
like if you go to like Florida, it's just all like pretty
sure.
much the
White
same. Yeah.
sand
Yeah.
vacation spots.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna do a little bit of a transition question and then maybe jump to some deeper stuff. If you've had a really long day, what do you do to relax?
I usually just take a nap, but I just kind of sit and yeah, I might like just kind of scroll on my phone, do nothing for a while, to unwind. And if there's any lessons I needed to learn from the day, I might sit with those. But there seems to be less and less of those these days. And but yeah, it's just kind of sitting in stillness, doing nothing, I guess.
All right. So you and I have talked about this recently, but if you think about trying to maintain friendships as an adult, how would you say are the best ways to do that?
I think the older you get, you just really got to have low expectations of people. It's when you're in your like teens and 20s and stuff, it's everybody's at a similar stage of life and generally everybody's wanting to do things. And I think the further along you get, it's everybody, you have families, you have all these other things going on, or, maybe people helping out or taking care of their parents, or there's just so much extra responsibility that happens that, I think being pretty unattached to things needing to work out a certain way, I think is important to have low expectations and take into account what people have going on in their lives, and you might not be fully aware of everything there. And I think it's important to, as you really like figure out who you are and what you like, I think it's about aligning with people that have similar goals, and also this willingness to do things on your own, I think is important. Like maybe like take a trip or plan on your own, and invite people and keep it optional. I think as it's important to just really zone into your preferences and set plans based on that stuff. And if people join you, it's kind of a bonus. It's creating like optionality with a lot of things where I don't necessarily like need other people, but it's like a bonus if they come along. I think that's important. That's like that helps create the detachment needed with the lower expectations that I was talking about. But yeah, I think it's just that understanding that, everybody's got a lot going on, and we want, if I put too high expectations on situations or people, like that creates resistance and that makes it less likely that people will join me. We kind of have to have this open door policy to just be able to be present in the situations and really connect with somebody. Is we can't have the hurt feelings we're bringing into it, because that might be kind of messing with the dynamic. And a lot of people, when they go to hang out with friends, they're looking for relief from their normal life. If it's like stressful in any way, we kind of have to know that that's where people might not be as reliable, is if they've got a lot of stress in their life, and there might be problems in the relationship. That's just another thing they're trying to avoid. So I think it's just kind of creating this welcoming space as much as possible, and inviting people to do things that, and aligning with people that you gel with, and where you feel like you can be yourself. Any of the performative stuff, or, clicky stuff like that generally falls away, because it's like built on playing a certain role within a group, and that doesn't really ever feel good to us. So as you get to know yourself, I think it's just continuing to align with the people that support you in that, and that make you feel good about it. It definitely is a challenge. Like it takes extra work, because there's not these like, there's the people you go to work with or whatever, or, but you don't have the school environment, you don't have that stuff going on. So it does take extra effort, um, and so you got to be kind of willing to put in that time and that investment into people. And I think when life gets busy, it's like we need to keep that in mind, that if I'm not putting energy into something, it's probably dying. The effort's important if something's really meaningful to you.
So a few questions ago, you touched on ego a little bit. How do you know if you're experiencing an ego death?
Well, you're probably going to be grieving. There's probably going to be some sadness and depression involved. You're probably going to be questioning a lot of things. There's going to be this desire for something else or something more, and but then you're going to be faced with the conflict of the things that might be in opposition to that, and that's an uncomfortable process, because a lot of times you have to outgrow this version of you. And so that means like letting go of some of these things that you thought were you all along. That's a very difficult thing to reconcile, especially if it's, if you are in kind of the performance of this is who I need to be, or this is who I've learned to be, or this is all I've done. It can feel like you're kind of jumping off a cliff there. And it's difficult to build up to that, to really, 'cause our mind is always trying to keep us safe, and so it wants continuity, and there might just be things like I can't do anymore, and on the other side of that I have to like become a completely different person, and that might mean I don't really know who I am on the other side of that. That can be terrifying. Is I think anytime we're deepening our thought process, questioning a lot of the things in our life, there is that kind of nudge that I need to grow in a new direction. But what does that mean if I take these steps? Like, will I lose these people? Will, I lose my job? Will, there's all the things we cling to for safety. Um, we have to get to the place where we're willing to surrender that and let that go. And that's what creates a lot of this mental backlash is everything I thought I am is no longer true, but I don't know who I am without it. I have to be willing to walk that path, and that's a very uncomfortable process. And yeah, so I would say mood swings is probably part of that, and intense emotions. There might be some rage mixed in there too. Of it can be an emotional roller coaster when you're kind of shedding these ideas that you've built your life on, that no longer fit. Because there's also, as you see, is like no longer true for you. There's also the recognition that, oh, like, did I waste my whole life, or did I waste all this time with something? That's also the grieving process of like, I feel like I'm like losing something that I've invested a lot into. And that's why, it's all like woven into my process here where we see like all your experiences as valuable, and that, you may need to let go of something, but there's still things that you take with you from that. It's not like an all loss. There's parts of it that are very useful and valuable. You might have developed some skills and abilities through that, but it's like your expression of it is no longer valid. And so it's getting to that place of just kind of saying, screw it. I know what this brings and I want something else. So I have to surrender these things and see what's on the other side of it. It's kind of more of a calling that you get for that, where it's like this deeper part of you like wants to come out, but you've probably stuffed it down so long that you don't know what that's going to mean for your life. Ego death is just having to confront so many ideas of like who you thought you were, and being able to venture into discovering who you really are. That's a bit of a process you go through.
Would you say that ego death is like permanent once it happens, or can you have these sort of resurgences that pop back through? Or secondary gains, they might call them.
I think the initial stages, there's going to be some stuff that pops through that you carry with you, but where we might let go of most of it, but we won't let go of all of it. But like once you fully let go, I think it is a permanence. Because once you're on the other side and you've like released the tension and weight of all that, um, it doesn't really like feel like you anymore. It feels like you can't kind of go back once you go all the way through. That's the tricky part, is it is a full commitment thing. When I was going through my own process, I would say it was like 5 or 6 times. They call it like the dark night of the soul or whatever. It's just like where you're just confronted with so much and it's overwhelming and you just know you can't continue that way anymore. And yeah, so it was periods of a few days of just like complete darkness I would feel. And each time on the other side of it, I would feel lighter and happier and better. It just would be such an intensity that, your mind, it's like really clinging to these things. And so you think really intense, like dark thoughts. And so, that comes in that realm of like suicidal thinking of, I don't want to be here, or like I don't like it here, that kind of stuff. And it's sticking with it to get to the other side. And so that's generally, that type of work takes some support, because it can be really intense and it can be very difficult. I always knew what I was going through when it was happening, because I'd kind of been in this game so long. But if it's something that's just like hits you, or you're just like, I can't move forward in this way anymore and it has to change, it just might be overwhelming, and that's probably where support's needed. But I was going through these methodical processes pretty regularly, where I was just digging deeper to try to get to the bottom of it. There would just be certain ideas that I would be stuck on, that like that part of me literally had to die. And so, that's a pretty volatile process to go through. And so I created a ton of space in my life to do that, which not everybody has the luxury to do. But yeah, once you're on the other side, it literally feels like another life. And that's a lot of the baseball stuff for me. That's kind of what it is. It doesn't even like feel like me anymore. It's weird to think about that was like a chapter of my life, because I'm like so detached from it now. Where there's like just like nothing to it anymore. And I think I I had to grieve it many, many times to get to that point, because I put so much into it. The full surrender is just this idea of that it just doesn't feel like you anymore. And so that's the permanent piece.
I'm gonna stay on the ego theme for this one. In our last episode, you talked about the ego being a mask and the ego being the way we manage our public image. Can you talk about what the ego is trying to avoid in terms of being seen or perceived?
I saw a video on this recently, and there's all these DMT videos out right now. We're talking about it, but yeah, because you kind of experience an ego death there, and he's like, well, like it's like seeing the ego is necessary. It's like that's how I get things done in this world. And he's like, yeah, if I'm gonna like write a book or things like that requires me to have this identity. And so there's the practical use of it of, I have to live, I have to survive, I have to make a living. So you kind of need to become something in order to do that. And it's just not taking that so seriously. Okay. That because you're more than that. This is just what I do. It's not who I am. And um, so the protecting our self-image thing is to not be outcasted. It's like we all want to be accepted and loved and appreciated and respected and like all that stuff. And so it's like it's just the management to that wears on us of like I feel like I'm like living a lie constantly. That's why we want to do the work to align your life so that it feels pretty natural, where because you do have to do certain things to exist. And so it's just like, okay, if I want to choose those things though, and I want to choose it from an aligned place of like this is how I would like to express myself. And I'm still playing ego games there, but but it's also it's not so exhausting to maintain it because it's pretty natural. And so yeah, we're trying to protect ourselves every step of the way, but a lot of times when we're trying to protect ourselves, like that's actually the thing that's holding us back from our next level. Really gifted people are full, like their just level of authenticity is higher than your average person. They've gone through that process of maybe being outcasted, and they're less dependent on the crowd. They're less dependent on the approval of others. They've gone through that process of separation and isolation, which is really painful, and that stems with a lot of the things we're talking about here. Is it's a painful process to like branch out and really, Carl Jung calls it the individuation process, right? You're addressing these aspects of you that have just basically conformed to this is how I need to live to stay safe, and all that stuff takes us off track from who we really are. And so it's it's seeing the value in it but not taking it too seriously of like, okay, and I go through this constantly where, okay, like how do I want my business to look, who are my clients, like all that stuff. So part of that is me like picking some sort of lane with that, but then I also give myself freedom to go outside that. This is how I'm presenting myself, but like oftentimes with my clients, I have all these other like deeper fringe conversations that are built on my training and all the things I've gone through that just like naturally unfold, but that's not like what I'm presenting to the world. Okay. And so it's just it's kind of holding your identity loosely and giving it freedom to change as you grow and evolve. And because if I'm too fixed in staying in this box, like that's going to make me miserable because like I'm going to have to shut down anything that might lead to me being like outcasted or not accepted by others, or it might be isolating. And so it's like you when you go through ego death and all those things, you approach those ideas to try and master them. Like you go into the pain of feeling alone and abandoned and like all that stuff, and you reconcile it and you build yourself from the ground up so that you don't need those other things. But also to make my way in the world and to make a living, it's just like, okay, now I need to pull back in and have like a message, and I need to direct that in a certain direction. And so that's the ego. Like I'm creating lanes to go through here. But I don't take it that seriously because I've done all that work. It's a tough thing because you got to shed the wounds. You got to shed those aspects of yourself that want to just stay safe. And you kind of have to say, screw it. You kind of have to put yourself out there and be willing to stand alone. That's a deeply uncomfortable process. And so anytime I'm existing in a system, there's all these unspoken expectations that are placed on everybody, like this is how we carry ourselves and this is how you need to behave and all that stuff. And that's one of the reasons I've never really entered a system, is because like I know what that brings is I don't want to fake it. I don't want to be somebody I'm not. And so I've chosen this path of doing this alone. And so that's the thing we're always trying to protect, is to not be kicked out of the group. But being in the group also builds this identity, this ego, this mask of like, this is who I have to be to exist in the group. And there's like self-sacrifice involved in that. And that's what really wears us down. So it's it's really that willingness to walk alone is what gives you the strength. Once you have that wisdom, now you can actually like bring that back to, you're just an average person. And that's what I do here is like I've walked this really hard path so that I have wisdom to share of like, you don't have to do what I did, but I I can share the wisdom that I learned from that so that that can improve certain areas of your life. I'm never asking somebody to like fully commit the way I did, but it's because I just chose freedom. I was like, I just want to be free. And but there's a lot of responsibility with that comes with that. And a lot of sacrifices and a lot of costs. I wanted to venture out to really like align my life in a very conscious way. And so that meant throwing away all the normal things. But now that I've thrown them all away, I'm not dependent on them. But now that I'm coming back to center, it's just like, oh, there are some of these things that I like, right? Um, I like coming to Vegas. I like nice clothes. I like, I want to make a lot of money, like all that stuff. But it's not coming from this like, oh, I need all those things to like prove I'm good enough. It's just more of like, oh, these are things I like prefer now. And if I didn't have them, that'd be fine too. So it's going through shedding all that stuff gives you the freedom to like basically get plugged back into stuff. But like you show up with a different energy, and it's like you don't feel obligated in the same ways.
So we kind of ran the gamut on questions. Do you have any last closing thoughts before we tell people the usual spots to find you and what's coming next and all that?
I think some of these topics we talk about or can be pretty intense, and to frame up my role as a coach is to not like make carbon copies of me. It's to bring more out of you. It's the wisdom and the gifts I've gained from doing those hard things is never any expectation I place on anybody. And it's just more of like being able to point out and identify those things for you. This area might be really challenging for you because you're locked into this identity that you need to shed. Rarely am I ever dealing with like a complete overhaul of somebody's life. It's more of like there's a specific goal in mind, or I'm wanting to improve in these certain areas. And so that's where we dig into those things. It's generally not that intensive of a process unless you want it to be. It's always being able to kind of see, my goal is to create this awareness that, there are maybe some aspects that you might be showing up in a way that you're hiding or not being who you want to be, and making the connection that that's exhausting and it doesn't make you feel very good about yourself. We can clean those things up so that you can live a more aligned life. That's really the goal of what we're talking about here. Is I've gone the depths so that I can meet people at all the different levels. It doesn't have to be that deep, but it can be if you'd like.
Let's talk about where people can find you and any other updates or news you got about anything coming up.
If you want to follow along on Instagram and YouTube at Brandon Thielk, we post out there pretty regularly, and on TikTok at bthelk. If you'd like to know more about this work, you can reach out and schedule a free strategy session with me on my website, brandonthielk.com. So it's just 30 minutes. I learn a little bit about you and share how I can help. Also, if you want to register for my newsletter, the Lightning Report, that comes out each Monday with updates on the business, some insights for the week, a podcast recap, and anything I got going on, we'll put in there. And also, yeah, please like, subscribe, ask questions. Would love to support you guys in a bigger way. If there's any specific issues or topics you'd like to hear about, please reach out and let us know. Pretty open book here. I'd love to share anything I can to help you guys.
Sounds good. Well, this one was fun, Brandon.
All right. Well, we'll see you next time.
All right. Talk to you later.